Let's do a check of what the papers are saying this morning. Welcome back. And of course, you know it's Monday. And when it's Monday on the newspaper review segment, it's TGIM. Mr. Daya Kitobi joins us this morning. And you're looking all ready for the week.
I was born ready for Mondays.
For Mondays, right? All right, let's get to the papers. And I'm spoiled for choice this morning. But it looks good to start with New Telegraph, since we're talking about security. And there's this response from the Senate. Rising insecurity, Senate convenes emergency plenary tomorrow. And we have, just a few riders here, but let's get to what they're saying. Military confirms credible intelligence on bandit kingpin Turji's arms training in Sokoto. Terrorist attack NSCDC, Kebbi police, gunmen kill ex-Ogun broadcaster, security guard. There's also Igboho's ultimatum, police or your LG debunk kidnap victims release. NDLEA arrests 2 godfathers for selling drugs to students in Abia. It's a mixed bag there, Mr. Kitobi, but what are your thoughts?
It's a plethora of insecurity. Everywhere you look, every sector, every aspect of human life, from communities to farms to cities to families to churches, mosques. Insecurity is rife everywhere. And I'm happy to see that at least the Senate is seeing that it has gotten to the stage where drastic action needs to be taken. For them to call themselves back from a recess and want to hold a plenary to discuss the security situation lets me know that they're beginning to see that this thing is hitting home too hard. For too long, government seems to have been a bit too complacent about this, as if it would go away on its own. But rather than that, it has escalated and continues to escalate to a point to where the sanctity of human life in Nigeria has been totally diminished. So Jeff was talking about the steps that Governor Okpebolo in Edo State is trying to take, which is very credible. Perhaps we can see the Senate recommending something like that at a national level. I would like to see legislation, and I think I heard about it some time ago, that would prescribe the death penalty for kidnapping and would shorten the period of time. There's some tweaks that can be made to the appellate process, to even if we have special courts, that the appellate process can be quickened and shortened to where, justice delayed won't be justice denied, because, even if you get convicted, you can string out the appellate process for ages and ages and ages, to where, with the passage of time, the sheer horror of what you did begins to diminish in people's minds. But if justice is speedy, but even before we get to the element of prosecution and jurisprudence, there's still the investigative process. There's the interdiction, which is the arrest. There's the then putting together of a credible prosecution, because you have to have evidence. The courts deal with, hard evidence, not speculation, not allegations, not the fact that you were seen around somewhere and thought to be a collaborator or a participant. Hard evidence is what the courts deal with. So I think that it's not just the judiciary, but even our law enforcement agencies, the prosecutorial arm. I think the investigative process needs to be much more watertight. I mean, it's one thing to depend on the military, the armed forces, to go head on and, combat these people. But not all of them are neutralized in the engagement process. So the ones that survive, I think the investigative process of bringing them to justice needs to be strengthened, because it's relatively easy to say, based on emotion and outrage, we can say, string them up and, throw away the key. But without having a watertight case, we can see many of these insurgents and bandits actually getting away. I also think they should eliminate the notion of a plea bargain in kidnapping situations, whereby we can say we are repentant, forgive us, we won't do it again. In exchange for laying down our arms, we will come in and you treat us with kid gloves. I don't think there should be any sort of plea bargain or any sort of compromise in the process of bringing this to book. So yeah, elements of a state of emergency are extremely necessary, and I hope the Senate begins to look at that as it begins to talk about this insecurity issue.
Any thoughts on what's the development playing out in Oyo State with the police in Oyo challenging Igboho's proclaimed intervention in the release of kidnapped victims? More importantly, as this relates to the implications for the fight against kidnapping, should it be one of antagonism between, non-state actors who want to intervene in that regard, or should there be cooperation if there's capacity?
The Igbohos of the world became necessary because of government failure. If government were up to its task and were handling its tasks, the Igbohos of the world would never find a foot in terms of being able to even be involved in this process at all. As Jeffrey said earlier, he's not comfortable with non-state actors, and you see them all over the place. You see them protecting pipelines in Niger Delta, which is a job for, say, the Navy, for example. So you see them in situations like this where people in the community begin to have more faith in the ability of non-state actors to protect them than the government. It's simply a failure of government. Government has failed to do what is necessary, which of course we've said, it's become a broken record to keep saying first duty of government is protection of lives and property. In Nigeria, that cliche has no meaning anymore. And so you see the Sunday Igbohos coming into relevance because people have more faith in their ability to protect them. Otherwise, why would he, an ordinary citizen, just like you, me, and everybody else, be able to stand up and issue an ultimatum to an entire people who may or may not be involved in this allegation? And he stands there and makes a government-like proclamation, which is a violation of anybody's human rights, constitutional rights, every right you can think of. But we are at that point now to where whatever solutions we can come up with to protect us, we will acquiesce to, So it just goes to show it's a breakdown of the normal structure of a society. The way society is ordered and structured has broken down in Nigeria to the point that non-state actors can begin to speak and act like they have, like their governments, So it's a bit worrisome, actually, in as much as it's schizophrenic, really, because on the one hand, if in truth he was able to issue this ultimatum and it had the necessary impact, which the police have disputed, but I saw some credible...
Make the police look bad.
I saw some credible news reports over the weekend that said this pregnant woman was released, and that because he gave this 2-hour ultimatum, it actually had an impact and they released those people. But police have debunked that. I said, no, nobody was. So we don't know as of this moment, which is exactly accurate. Perhaps as the day unfolds, we'll find out. But if in truth he issued that ultimatum and it had the necessary results, it means that even the insurgents are giving more credence to non-state actors than they are to the government. So what are we talking about here is complete breakdown of government responsibility. And so life doesn't exist in a vacuum. Something will step in to take up the space created one way or another. And the problem is that you might create a hydra-headed monster that down the road becomes something that will eat you up yourself.
Yeah, because that's a worry. Now, if you have someone that's been abducted, you really don't care who brings them out.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day. But this is very worrying that the states may surrender its, quote unquote, not directly, surrender its monopoly of violence to someone else who may not be able to manage it in the long run, which is why these warning signs are quite important for the state to come in to know what they have to do quickly. Because if the people now have confidence in someone who doesn't have the authority of the state, except it's a proxy, whatever, then it's very concerning. Let's go. It just aligns a bit with what the Vanguard is saying. Troops block escape routes as terrorists reduce demand. So this looks like some kind of, some small lights in a very dark tunnel. Troops block escape routes. So what this implies, in my understanding, is that, wherever these guys wanted to take these kids and their teachers to, is now difficult. They've been surrounded, the perimeter has been surrounded such that they can't go anywhere.
Is this Orire you're talking about?
Yes, because they say kidnap kingpin, indigenous of Orire LG, radicalized by Ansaru Group. And then talked about police Igbo clash over release of kidnapped victims. So, what do you make of this story?
Well, I listened to Governor Makinde over the weekend, and he said essentially that the kidnappers are surrounded and they have no exit path in terms of being able to escape, that they've been surrounded. And I asked myself, well, if they've been surrounded, it means you know where they are. So what exactly?
No, they've always known where they are.
They've always known where they are,
that's
without a doubt. I think it's...
It just gets complicated when you have civilians around
Exactly,
them.
it's a strategic, tactical issue in terms of how do you go in there, guns blazing, without harming, killing the very people you're trying to rescue. So, but... whatever the strategy or the tactics are that are required to get these people out, the bottom line is it's been over 30 days that they've been in captivity, their families, the entire country is really perturbed by this particular one because there are little children involved and, you know, there are elderly people involved, and we've seen live video that shows the anguish, you know, that they're going through, and it touches the heart to know that this could be any of us, and it seems like the solution is the problem is defying solution, and so it gives little comfort to hear platitudes from the government that, oh, we've surrounded them, or we know where they are, or we'll bring them home safely. We've heard that over and over again, yet the ordeal continues on a daily basis. We haven't seen any respite, and you worry that 2- and 3-year-olds being in the bush for over 30 days, how are they surviving? How are they feeding? How are they sleeping? It's rainy season, you know, there's insects, there's animals in the forest. How are they coping? You know, so it's very worrisome, and it's not just Oriri, it's all over the north, it's all over the country, it's all over the south, where you have various people in captivity who are going through dire straits, and there seems to be no end in sight. It's unconscionable, really, and if they've got them surrounded and there's no exit route, okay, so let's move on to the next stage of the engagement, which means how do we now go in, get the victims out without harming them, and at the same time neutralizing the insurgents. It's not an easy task, but it's not impossible either for a government that has a political will and is determined to bring this to an end.
For me, I think the president should almost take well, let me say it differently so that it doesn't look like he's getting a cue from a subnational, but a stronger statement as far as this issue of national security, because all of the statement he's made has been defied. The statement he made at the presentation of the budget, you know, it came gun blazing. Like literally the Minister of Information came and said, in case you were not clear on what the president said, this is what he meant. If you're holding gun as a non-state actor, you're going to be in trouble. And they were very clear. So they doubled down on that. It went to Plateau and made a statement during that visit, which I consider was a very, you know, mistake in my view, but perhaps because the president doesn't have something to reassure, telling the lady, look, don't worry, it's not going to happen again. Barely 24 hours, something happened. Somebody was killed in that same Plateau. We can go on and on and on. So I think the states needs to do something that has to show that we're in charge here, because somebody is definitely in charge. It's either the state is in charge or the perpetrators of this evil are in charge. It's either the other way, one way or the other.
This might be a testament to speed up the process of state police.
Yes.
Absolutely, because I think if we do have state police, then the states will have greater wherewithal to be able to combat this than be pretty much waiting on the federal government to take the lead.
Yeah, so we'll wait
I
and
have
see.
my reservations where that is concerned. I'm wondering if there'll be anything significantly different, you know, when the structure is changed and, you know, states now have the powers to intervene in policing. If, you know, the funding has not increased significantly to empower states to tackle insurgency now.
They have more money now, although we know that some states will not be able to afford certain kinds of policing.
And so they have more money now, but you see measured interventions in support for even state police commands by state governors.
I think the argument is always to the fact that, and which is why I align with you in certain aspect, the argument is to the fact that they don't have control over this, the CPs or the police. Remember when Yeson Wike was governor, he used to say, I'm not the chief security officer, I'm the chief logistics.
He's not the first governor to have said that.
He said, I'm the chief, at least I remember his. He said, I'm not the chief security officer, I'm the chief logistics officer, so I provide the things they need. So let's now see what excuses they will give.
Exactly, state police will eliminate the excuses.
So all that excuse, you know, my fear is that, my personal worry is that, let's also be prepared for abuse. With the greatest respect, some of them are not mature to manage certain things. how they became governors, only their people know.
Yeah.
Because you can see how they manage their state assembly and their local government areas. But anyway, they are governors, so we give them the respect that they deserve. However, whether the shenanigans or petty politics will override the real reason for why state police is established, we just need to brace up and be ready so that we're not going to shout.
You know,
when it starts.
interesting point you made, Jeffrey, just now, and I wonder how that will play out in relation to neutrality of security agents during state governorship elections.
I think we'll just have, what we are now, I think we'll just need to have faith. Maybe not through the baby and the bathwater, but I've kept my expectations somewhere, and I'm ready to wait for that. Maybe we'll go to leadership newspaper.
Let's stay with the Vanguard.
Okay.
There's an interesting story at the top of the nameplates that I want Mr. Akitobi to respond to. 6 out of 7. How APC swept Ekiti governor, 5 by-elections, lost Rivers to the PDP. Was that really a loss?
When you arrangement. That was an arrangement.
The person that won the election and his alliances. Mr. Akitobi.
Yes, indeed. Look, politics today is just such a mishmash. Well, Ekiti, I'm not surprised with the outcome, actually. And for me, the silver lining in the whole Ekiti election was the fact that INEC actually acquitted itself admirably for a change. I mean, from a standpoint of logistics, election materials arrived on time, voting started right at 8 o'clock, you know, everything went well. Beavers recorded 96%
success.
Yeah, success. And IREV had 85% in real time, upload of the results in real time. So, you know, I felt like INEC did well. On the part of the electorate, I was a bit disappointed because when I saw the 1 million registered voters who collected PVC, I was excited. Then you come to find out that 400,000 or thereabouts came out to vote, and you ask yourself, what is causing that disconnect? If people are motivated enough to go out and get their PVCs, what now discouraged them from coming out on the day to vote if you recorded only 40% of collected PVCs? So the jury is still out. Some people are saying, well, because it was a foregone conclusion that the incumbent was highly favored. I've heard on other parts that incumbent was not highly favored. I've heard that he had the support of all the governors, even past PDP governors, past, you know, even people who competed against him, they all fell in behind him, you know. But the point is that, from my sense, even though there have been some allegations of malpractices in the Ekiti election, but when I look at how wide the gap was, that the person who won scored 400,000 close to, and
319,324.
Yes, and the person who came second scored 40,000. It's about 8 times the difference, about multiples of 8. And I say, how do you rig something that's that vastly different? You can rig when it's close, but when the gap is so wide, it's very, very different. Because even if you complain about, oh, they snatch ballots here, or these people were intimidated here, how do you make up that gap in a state that's not that big? So I think ultimately that, what we saw in Ekiti might be a template, or might be telegraphing what we should expect in 2027. In terms of the Rivers. Rivers, you have mass confusion in Rivers. My sense really is that the DNA of the Rivers people is still PDP till tomorrow. I think it's just politics that has rearranged the entire political field in Rivers, but that internally the people themselves are still PDP, and maybe that's what we saw in that election.
Here's on weekend, people are confusing the Rivers people with the kind of politics.
Nobody knows where
they're choosing to call something a rainbow coalition.
Yes.
So
there's nothing. There is nothing new about collaborating. I think in 1999. Wow, that sounded really fast. In 1999, there were two parties that merged, so came together to work for, I think, Olufalaye,
yes,
and all of that besides the PDP. So what he's doing is not unique. Whether it is forced marriage, that's another matter altogether. But what it does to the people and their mentality is that it limits their choice, which is not good for democracy. Mm-hmm. So even what he's doing, or what their group are doing in Rivers State, is not widespread. It is his group of PDP, which is recognized by INEC. Yes. I know they don't like us saying group. Yes, because there are people in PDP who don't like them, who don't agree with them. So yes, they may be recognized by INEC, but there are people in PDP who say, we don't like working with you. So to that extent, we respect those people's position, but they are the ones recognized by INEC. So I just feel that it's a literal conundrum, merging all of these parties together, whether by force or by coercion or whatever it is, or by whatever interest he used to put them together, limits the people's choice to be able to make. So the people perhaps are now left with, I think the people can now make up their mind in the election, whether they want to work with the coalition, is it the Rainbow Coalition, to whatever they put out, or they will look for the ADCs or the NDCs or other parties now. Because what they are doing, like they are taking turns, okay, in this election, let's give it to PDP. In this election, let's give it to... That's what I'm saying. I don't want to call it victory. I call it an arrangement. Just go and cast your vote.
There's something to be said. There's something to be said for this issue of collaboration. You know? Because from Ekiti, what I saw was that as long as the opposition remains fragmented,
yes,
there is little to no hope of unseating the APC in 2027.
The difference between what happened in Ekiti and what happened in Rivers is that in Rivers, they have collapsed their interest, literally. Ekiti just shows support without collapsing the party together.
Jeffrey, this collapsing of interest or this collaboration...
These are for the political players.
Whatever
not the
nomenclature is, Mr. Kitobe, I wonder if it is the expression of popular will, I mean the people of Rivers, or it's an expression of the political interest of a few.
See,
the political class.
The thing about it is that democracy thrives when there are choices. So when you narrow the field, whether by joining, collapsing, whatever the case may be, you create less ability for competition to thrive.
Exactly.
So when you look in, at what happened in Rivers, for example, what has happened is that the people have less incentive because there are not clearer options. And let's go back to Ekiti again. Part of why the opposition performed so abysmally is they didn't offer a credible alternative to what you said. The jury is still out on the performance of the incumbent. We don't know how we did. We're not in Ekiti. But clearly, the opposition didn't offer a credible alternative that the people could hold on to. And I see something similar happening in Rivers as well, is that if you've reduced the ability of there to even be an opposition offering an alternative, then what choices do the people have? The devil you know is better than the angel you don't. So we'll just still stay with what we know.
I am not just comfortable with forcing the people to limiting the people's choice. Yes. I would never agree to it. Absolutely. But they are the politician. My job is a journalist. As I say, we are more interested in the process. They are more interested in victory. So our mission, our objective are strategically totally different. I want to be sure that vote counts, the process complies with what the law says. They can bother themselves about who wins and who loses in an election. In fact, the classic now, what is even disturbing within the political class, I hope they know what they are sowing as seed for this democracy, especially the current ones who have blurred the lines of what anti-party activity is. So you see somebody, there's a difference between staying in your party and working for another party quietly.
Right.
That is technically allowed, at least it's not open. Than coming out to say, you see this my party, I'll work against you. And nothing happens. In fact, I was in Anambra to cover the election. Chukwuma Soludo won with a landslide just like this. When I saw the congratulatory message of the president, who is the APC leader, to the governor of Anambra governor, I felt bad for the APC guy. The president was literally happy in his statement about. So they have a relationship. So these guys, with the greatest respect, are just blurring the lines, literally confusing the electorate. So what eventually how it impacts is low voter turnout, because people are like, okay, since you have gathered yourself to make up your mind what you want to do, just take the election and run away.
Speaking of voter turnout, the candidate of the PDP, an ally of Minister Nyesom Wike, won that election in Rivers Southeast with 46,961 votes, while the candidate is it of the APC now, Mr. Ebenezer Erewari of the APC, polled 1,647 votes in an election, by the way, covering 7 local governments. So a mere 47 or 48,000 votes determined the exercise.
It's an arrangement, not an election in my view. But they've been elected. That's the most important thing. The Rainbow Coalition know what they are doing.
Master strategist.
Yes, the Rainbow Coalition, they know what they are doing.
Absolutely.
Leadership newspaper is where we'll go to next. Leadership newspaper. Let's see. We have a lot of stories to cover before we get to our first set of guests. Reactions as Onyebanji becomes first Ekiti governor to win second consecutive time. The reason why I had to take this is because he's broken history, he's made history.
Yes.
And again, there's something, I don't know whether you or Bukola mentioned it, we must also commend the security agencies and INEC for because I don't think we heard of violence or anybody being killed or anything.
No violence.
I think sometimes
there were reports of unrest in about 10 local governments, 24 incidents.
But nobody died.
It was mentioned on our sister political program yesterday.
Okay.
And I believe that the security agents need to speak to it because ahead of that election, there had been concerns about flashpoints in Ikole, in Moba, and a number of local governments in Ekiti State. And so if we still had these incidents, it means that intelligence was not gathered in order to checkmate those incidents from occurring. It was important to mention that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Mine is that at least nobody died.
Nobody died.
Incidents may have happened. At least nobody died first. But that doesn't mean incidents cannot happen. So to that extent, we may commend them. Where they are doing well, we commend them. Where they are doing badly, we come gun blazing on all of them.
Yes.
So your reaction to this particular story?
They said there was some measure of voter intimidation, which is part of what the complaint in general is. The two major complaints about Ekiti were vote buying, which the incumbent party, having the deep pockets and the treasury of the state, probably had a greater proliferation of this particular infraction than the opposition. But yes, there were actual videos of cash exchanges, transfers being made to people. So vote buying is still a big problem. I think INEC is a bit hamstrung in dealing with this. I think there's more of the security agencies' responsibility to do things. But more than anything else, I think sensitization to the electorate itself, that when you sell your vote for a morsel of porridge, you are shortchanging yourself over the long term. I think it's in the way that we approach the importance of elections and what we stand to gain that is the greater factor in inhibiting vote buying. The law enforcement agencies can do all they want to do. It doesn't have to be at the polling unit that the vote buying will occur. It can occur in a hotel room, it can occur in your house, it can occur in your village, in your community. So it'll be a difficult thing to arrest. So I think it's more important to sensitize the electorate as to the dangers of going that route in terms of who eventually prevails in an election. The second thing they talked about was intimidation, voter intimidation. That squarely is the purview of the law enforcement agencies, the security agencies, that anybody who wants to cast their vote should be able to do so freely, without fear or favor, and with the full weight of the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria behind you to cast that single ballot. Nobody should be intimidated out of performing their civic duty.
Mr. Captivity, as you spoke, something came to my mind. There's also remote vote buying ahead of the elections. Sometimes politicians distribute souvenir packs to party faithful, or if you like, participants in what Kadi calls the economy of mobilization. And so, shall we ban that element of remote vote buying? Don't answer that, Mr. Captivity. We must anchor the newspaper review segment at this point. Thank you so much for coming through, as always, and for providing your sound analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure always. Thank God it's Monday. Rest period is over. Let's all get out there and build something. Have a great week, Nigeria.
Indeed. And so the week is unfolding in a great way. Stay with us for our first conversation coming up after this time out. We'll be right back.